Is the dark side of the Force stronger than the light side? Now, this question seems to get answered right in The Empire Strikes Back when Luke asks Yoda this very thing, to which Yoda replies that no, it's quicker, easier, and more seductive, but that's about all he says on the matter, which then leads us to wonder a couple things, like, is the light side stronger, or are they roughly equal in terms of power? And if so, what's that based on exactly? I mean, how does the Jedi measure how powerful the light side is compared to the dark? Because I can't imagine they would be basing it off how effectively it can be used against another person, which a Darksider likely would. Especially not after Yoda also said that the Force is to be used for knowledge and defense, never attack. So maybe the light side is only more powerful from a certain point of view. And keep in mind that in Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan tells Luke that many of the truths we cling to rely greatly on our own point of view. So yes, perhaps the light side is stronger than the dark, but only certain aspects or when used in certain ways. Then there's the curious fact that, as my friend Mr. Search pointed out to me recently, we never see a Jedi, at least in the movies, defeat a Sith without presumably tapping into the dark side at some point. Just think, in Episode 1, we see Qui-Gon defeated by Maul, before Obi-Wan gets angry over the death of his master and manages to give him a good run, until Maul turns the table on him. And it's then only thanks to Maul's overconfidence and desire to play with his prey that Obi-Wan eventually defeats him. Then, in Attack of the Clones, Anakin and Obi-Wan are simply no match for Dooku, likely even if they had worked together as Obi-Wan had suggested they do. Even Grandmaster Yoda, perhaps the most powerful Jedi there's ever been, cannot defeat Dooku strictly using the Force, which seems like a type of battle a Jedi might have the advantage in. Dooku also declares during this encounter that he has become more powerful than any Jedi, and if Yoda cannot best him, perhaps this is the case. Then again, we have no idea how the fight would have eventually ended had Dooku not used Obi-Wan and Anakin to eventually escape. And then in Revenge of the Sith, Anakin defeats Dooku, but only after Dooku tells him he has hate and anger that he doesn't use, which seems to prompt Anakin to indeed use them. And then he goes so far as to execute Dooku at the command of Palpatine, which Anakin quickly admits was not the Jedi way, and he even seems confused as to why he did it, which I think is evidence he was very much in tune with the dark side at the time, though he didn't even realize it. Then, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, again Yoda fails to be able to defeat a Sith using the light side, though once again the fight does not reach a final conclusion, if you will, since Yoda is forced to flee when clone troopers show up. And then of course there is Anakin versus Obi-Wan, and this does seem to be the one instance where a Jedi is able to defeat a Sith without tapping into the dark side. Then again, it's difficult to imagine that Obi-Wan didn't draw on his emotions at all during that fight, considering he was fighting against someone he had considered his brother, who had recently turned on the Jedi and even slaughtered children. There's also the fact that Anakin's overconfidence is ultimately what did him in. But I believe that's where the key in all this is, overconfidence. Because even though in Return of the Jedi we get yet another example of a Jedi being able to turn the tables on a Sith only after they get angry and tap into the dark side, and I'm of course referring to how Luke drove Vader back and eventually took off his hand, we also get another example of a Sith losing or being killed because of overconfidence, and I'm of course referring to Palpatine being thrown into the pit by Vader. And this plays in beautifully with what George Lucas always said of the dark side and the Sith, that they are self-destructive in nature, and I think how Jedi truly defeat Sith is to take advantage of this flaw. In other words, a Jedi's strength is in their patience and discipline, that they allow the Force to flow through them and guide them, instead of trying to control and manipulate the Force and, in a sense, go against nature and the will of the Force, as those who wield the dark side do. That patience and alignment with the Force means that a Jedi will eventually be given the opportunity to defeat a Sith who is destined to get frustrated and make a self-destructive mistake, assuming that Jedi has the mastery of the light side to wait for that very precious moment. And this is ultimately how a Jedi measures power with the Force, the ability to trust in it and allow it to guide them, whereas a Sith trusts only in themselves and tries to bend the Force to suit their own needs. Which means the dark side isn't stronger, but again, as Yoda says, it's quicker, easier, and more seductive. The dark side is a way to become powerful for yourself and quickly, which often gives them an edge over a Jedi who may spend a lifetime trying to truly master the light side and becoming a true servant of the Force. As I see it, the light side is a slow, difficult to master path that leads to power that is used for the benefit of others, and this is achieved only after one lets go of their own desires and allows the Force to be what truly guides them, which, of course, is not easy for beings who, by nature, tend to be selfish. And this is why a Sith, who may even have far less years of training, seems to be as powerful, if not more so, than Jedi with many more years of training under their belt. This then leads us to the question, should the Jedi use the dark side? Because a great many fans feel they should, and also think that in The Last Jedi, Luke is going to reveal this is his new belief for the Jedi, that they must use both and become something grayer, if you will. And I'll admit, I've put plenty of videos out there suggesting this very possibility, mainly because I do think Lucasfilm under Disney may begin to change some of the concepts and ideas of the Force, moving them away from what Lucas originally intended them to be. You may disagree, and believe me, that's fine. It's more or less just a gut feeling I get from a lot of the other things we've seen in the new canon thus far. And I'll also admit that Jedi, knowingly and willingly using the dark side, does sound like a cool idea on the surface. But part of being a Jedi, a big part, is resisting the dark side and being a true servant of the Force. Using the dark side means going against the will of the Force and the natural order of things. And knowingly going against the will of the Force is the complete opposite of what a Jedi is supposed to do. Furthermore, taking away the Jedi's fear of falling to the dark side also radically changes everything about them. To which you may counter, if they flirt more with the dark side, it will make their stories even more intriguing, and the dance between the two, without succumbing to the darkness, will now be a constant struggle for the Jedi, and exciting to watch. And again, that does sound interesting and cool, I won't say it doesn't, but a problem we would still have is there must be a drawback to using the dark side. If anyone can use it without there being some sort of price or repercussions, and all too often consequences for the galaxy itself, then what's the point anymore? The dark side is essentially the cheater's path. It's for those who want the power for selfish reasons and don't want to have to put in the time to earn it, and hence don't garner the necessary wisdom to use that power properly. And I don't know that Disney wants to turn the Jedi into something that, in a sense, advocates such things. And if the dark side of the Force is something that just can be tapped into and used when needed, and even used for good, and then you can just stop yourself and move on as if it's no big deal, then you've completely destroyed the essence of what Star Wars has always been at its core, the battle of good versus evil. And yes, even though I do think they may go for more moral ambiguity in Star Wars, and some isn't bad, mind you, and I could see them changing or expanding on many things about the Force, the Jedi, and so on, I do hope it's not changed in a way that it doesn't feel like the Star Wars I, and likely a lot of you, grew up with. And I try to cling to what Maz Kanata said in The Force Awakens, about there being only one fight that has taken many forms over the ages, and that is the fight between good and evil. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Is the dark side stronger? Is the light? Or are they roughly equal? Should the Jedi tap into the dark side, or as I suggest, does it kind of destroy the whole purpose of the Jedi and Star Wars in general? So let me know in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And also, thanks again to my friend Mr. Search for giving me the idea for this video. And until next time, thanks for watching.